their own little movement, or maybe not together. Actually, I think Refn didn't want to be in it, but the films that they were putting out around the same time are also very difficult dramas to watch, but this one kind of felt like a fresh punch to the face.
Yeah. Yes.
At the time. Now it's kind of like we see it in almost every drug movie. It's just the same premise.
I agree.
Yeah.
So after being invited to America again, he moved to Los Angeles for his next venture in Fear X, which starred John Turturro, and told the story of a mall cop whose wife is killed suddenly, which causes the cop and our main character to begin obsessing over hours of surveillance footage. Its intense nature and David Lynch-esque style didn't fare so well, as he came into financial troubles, setting his career back, being $1 million in debt with his company NWR, I think it was called. And with his newborn child, he then returned to Denmark to film Pusher 2 and 3 in order to pull his family out of a massive debt kind of crisis. And I guess I found out that he vowed never to make any sequels of Pusher, and so with his back up against the wall, that's why he kind of fleshed out these other 2 entries, which ultimately helped him and pulled him out of that situation, and kind of gave him the edge to do what he did later on in his career. But Pusher 2, I think is really good. As we follow more Maud's character, who he's not the brightest. He gets
none of them are.
He gets into trouble, and it's crazy. But that guy always commands the screen, and he was good even that early. He was always kind of this phenomenon to watch. So.
Yeah, he still is. He's so good. He's one of the best actors, even now, I would say. But and he works, of course, here in the States, and he works even still now in Denmark. He still puts out films over there, and it's just I think it's really cool to see how big he's gotten, because he is just a natural talent. It's incredible. And then Pusher 2, that film. It's just raw power. He is actually he's he's a terrible person in Pusher 2. He does some really bad things, but of course in that world, in that setting that he's been put in, he's not going to be a nice guy. Mm-hmm. He's there for a reason. And as the middle piece of the Pusher trilogy, it's definitely an interesting step. I say when I watched all 3 of the films back to back, 2 I was expecting because the end of Pusher is so climactic.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to just carry on and complete find out what happens to this person, and then see where it goes from there. But it's not. None of them are really connected in that way, which is, I think, it makes it even better, because of a linear structure. I think would have kind of
taken away from it.
Yeah, it would have made it worse if you actually tried to make it a linear story between the 3. But I think actually 3 is my personal favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I love 1 and 2, but when I watched 3, I was really moved by it, and it's that final scene in the warehouse is just rough.
Well, would you agree that the end of, I think it's part 2, that has one of his only real good happy endings, I would say, throughout his everything that he's done.
Yeah. In a twisted
semi-happy ending, I guess.
Right. Yeah, it could be worse.
For him.
Yeah.
I should say. But yeah, I think 3 is really strong because it's just stops giving a shit about, it just becomes so much more kind of visceral in I guess where you're at, and I could see why it'd be your favorite, because it's kind of like you're not expecting where it goes, I guess, or how far you fall.
Right. To me, it's like, I mean, like, I like to watch. I mean, I watch everything. I enjoy just going out and watching. I have, as much as I like these like heavy dramas, I love these, crazy giant blockbusters.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to lean towards something specific, it's going to be more of these heavy dramas.
Yeah.
That I like to just soak into. And to me, Pusher 3 is actually like a really strong character drama, because it follows. I don't remember the character's name, but the actor is Slatko. Probably not pronouncing that right, but he is kind of like the kingpin, tracing back to 1, and it doesn't clear up anything of, like, what happens in 1 and 2, but it follows him in his day-to-day life and his family and his daughter, and how his life and his career choice has impacted all of those things. And so, to me, I think that one is why it's so strong, is because it gives you something like more real, like something more realistic than 1 and 2 are, even though they are, they're gritty, they're definitely realized. But in 3, it's like the culmination of this entire world finally coming to an end, and kind of seeing like what kind of world this is, like if this is the road you're gonna head down, ultimately this is where you're gonna end up, if you even want a sliver of a life, and you have to make these decisions that are like, how could you live with yourself?
Yeah.
But it's a really strong trilogy.
It paints these people as like normal individuals that just have a really fucked up kind of job, I guess. And it does really, they bring in like kind of bigger side characters from both the other two, the past installments, and they have cameos that are really cool for the other, for fans of the other films.
Right.
And then, it kind of switches where the main characters aren't, Danish or whatever, which I guess was its downfall critically for them over there. They really hated that.
Yeah,
I guess. And I guess so. Pusher 2 saved his career and earned him a number of awards and nominations with the Danish community, but Danish critics weren't too keen on Pusher 3, which ultimately led to Refn to vow never to make another film in Denmark again.
Right.
So, while in UK at this time looking for another English language project, he's offered a gig of Mrs. Marple, I think is how you pronounce it.
Oh, Agatha Christie. Yeah, yes. I forgot about that.
Yes.
And what you gotta do, what you gotta do.
and this is where he actually meets his longtime editor, Matt Newman. Then Refn gets the script for Bronson. He agrees to do the film on the condition that he can rewrite it.
Of course.
So 2008, Bronson stars Tom Hardy and is the story of one of the UK's most notorious inmates, Charlie Bronson, who, while being incarcerated for a small crime, added years to his own sentence by causing violent chaos on the inside. This is where we finally get a taste of his pop synth taste with the track from Glass Candy and Johnny Jewel.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beginning, really.
Yeah.
Of course, I should say that in the timeline, I didn't obviously watch these films. I mean, I'm only 24.
Yeah.
So, like, I came into his world through Drive. Most, like, all fans.
Yeah.
And then I kind of trailed backwards. So, when I saw Drive, that was the first time I was exposed to any of the Italians do a better bands or artists, and Johnny Jewel as a musician and a composer. So getting back to Bronson, like hearing that song in that specific scene in Bronson, it almost makes the movie.
It does.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
Like, when you think of Bronson, you just think of that sequence and that song, you know. And it's so cool, that mixed with Pet Shop Boys, with New Order, and then all the classical compositions that are like intertwined. Because there's no original score. It's just all
music,
classical pieces, and then these synth pop songs. That's really like the first. That's a really strong soundtrack. You know, that's the first. That's a really interesting piece, because he doesn't do that again. You know, he's just straight like synth now. Even with Cliff Martinez, he's mostly just doing these ambient kind of synth pieces in his later works, even up until now, with his new show coming out next week. You already know what it's going to sound like, but how strong of a force Bronson is in Tom Hardy's performance as Charles Bronson, and just that whole world. Because I watch interviews of this guy like all the time, and sometimes I go back to them too, because they're just some of them are just so funny, because he just says the weirdest things, you know. And some of them are like really like truthful, you know. He's definitely like he has a unique perspective on things.
Yes.
And you can agree with what he says, and you cannot agree, or you can think he's like, you know, just like full of shit, I guess, you know. But a lot of these guys are. A lot of these crazy filmmakers are. So when like with Bronson, he said that he never really wanted to make a film about Charles Bronson. He just sympathized and I think related to the fact that, you know, he's always just wanted to be famous. And, you know, both Charles Bronson is the same way. You know, he just did what he did because he wanted the attention. And he didn't give a shit. And, you know, that's why he's still in prison. But, which is crazy. I mean, and in my honest opinion, like, Tom Hardy's an excellent actor, but Bronson is the role that I think, like, he just can't top. Like, it's just the best thing that I've seen him do. And I don't think I'll ever get to see him get to that level again, because he is really strong in all of his films, but he doesn't really, like, go... he doesn't reach that level.
It's nothing that challenges him the way that was, because that was like a strict, the entire thing is on him,
right?
You know what I mean? And I know that he was like super obsessed with Charles Bronson, and he had this affinity for him already, which probably led to all the crazy amounts of detail and stuff that are in that movie,
right? And
it just makes it... I remember watching that for the first time, and I was like totally fucking mind blown.
Yeah, it's a crazy movie. Like,
it is,
especially in 2000. I think it's 2008 that it came out.
Yeah,
or something like that. Yeah, I showed that as soon as I watched it. I was like, oh my god, I have to share this with somebody.
To as many people as possible.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. So I showed it. I remember showing it to my brothers, and they were like, they'd never seen anything like that before. They weren't sure what to think about it. Even like, he was just like, oh, that was weird. But it eventually became one of his favorite movies because it's so bizarre. Yeah, it's just nuts. It's a crazy movie. Tom Hardy is so good in that movie.
He really is, breaking the fourth wall, and just, it's crazy. I shared that with my not older sister, but she's the oldest. I have 3 younger sisters, and she fell in love with it. And I think that I've kind of shaped her movie taste, and that's one of her favorites. Like,
it's always great to do that. To give somebody something to love is always great. And my brother's the same too. Like there's some films that I've shown him when he's like, oh, okay. And they're just like he's never going to see that again.
Uh-huh.
But then there's other ones that connect.